He described the rationale this way, as between actants having to do with narrative syntax and actors who are recognizable in the particular discourses in which they are manifested. Actants, in other words, are defined by their place in an abstract syntactic structure. Actors are recognizable as real people. For Greimas, an actant, as in actor network theory, is not necessarily a human being, but it must be what Greimas called an anthropomorphic classeme. What he meant by that mouthful is that an actant is an expression of agency, whatever its materialization, because we can detect in it the presence of a human attitude. To borrow from the paper by Van Vuuren and Koren, it's an attitude that transforms a connection into a relationship, makes it anthropomorphic. To again cite Greimas, a rule may require someone to do something, or more likely not to do something. The rule communicates an attitude, signs that say, no right turn, no smoking, please close the door. Actor network theory borrowed the term actant, but I fear it has sometimes discarded the communicative logic of human motive behind it. For Greimas, actants are agents because they are components in a relationship that is narratively defined. If you look at the dictionary, the word agent has two meanings, not one. It's both what acts, but also what acts for. It must act for to be truly an agent. And we all use agent that way. We say the agent of this and the agent of that, but it's the acting for. To be more precise, the actant is defined by Greimas, but what he called a communicative schema. In other words, the notion of agency, acting, actant, is already embedded in the concept of communication. Communication, in turn, is defined by him as a structure of exchange. It's two-way, not unidirectional. It's the embedding in a communicative relationship that makes the actant meaningful to us as conveying attitude. Whatever the materialization of the agency, provided it is grounded in and expresses human motive, that is to say, it is anthropomorphic, it qualifies as an actant. Anything can be an actant as long as it conveys some kind of attitude. If it fails that test, the signs stop working. Suppose you're told that all the buildings have been randomly moved around as a result of Halloween or April Fool's Day. You wouldn't trust them anymore. The human motive inscribed in them would be wrong. As Neff and Hirsch have put it here, the artifacts that sustain organizational communication, the lifeblood of any organization really, are those that are inscribed with instrumental, symbolic, and aesthetic meanings. They serve as the conceptual link among disparate and sometimes conflicting groups within an organization. Actor network theory tends, on my reading, to sometimes play down the two-way, reciprocal, and associational machinery of communication. The meaning of an act is not located in the written or spoken words themselves, nor the persons who speak them, but in the fact that the act which they materialize is already embedded within and reconstructs a relationship. Not merely a question of connections, but of relationships. As John Austin pointed out, if there's no uptake of an act of speech, it fails. The text has no intrinsic meaning of its own. Its meaning is established in a communicative sequence that indexes or establishes a relationship. ANT, the actor network theory, has retained the connectivity, but sometimes, not always, sometimes obscures the punctuation that communication as a reciprocal relationship introduces into a sequence of speech acts. Instead, too often it offers an explanation of action that we could read as linear. The result is to evacuate action of its communicative sense and patterning. The problem this poses for me is that an organization is not out there. It's a feature of communication. It is grounded in patterns of exchange, the negotiation of transactions, and the formation of relationships. As Bruno Latour has put it in his talk so well, so earlier, there never is any sui generis corporate body. Organizations remain always immanent to the instrumentarium that bring them into existence. An organization is not and never will be a superorganism, a whole superior to its parts, a corporate body, a moral entity made up of its many constituents. Bravo. Right on. On the other hand, if we wish the relational basis of communication out of existence, then I think that inevitably part of the roadkill will be organization. And we all know that organizations are real. They're a crucial part of our 2008 environment. If you accept the ontological primacy of relationship, the nature of organization, I believe, ceases to be a mystery. Like any other relationship, it is a temporary accommodation, still under negotiation. This being said, we have to be careful. One of the conference papers I really liked was submitted by Anne Nicotera. We've tended to be so focused on process, she writes, organization as a verb and organizing, that we obscure the other side of the coin, organization as a noun. As Anne points out, we've fallen into the habit of thinking of organization as an agent. Well, then how can you be an agent if you're not an entity that is capable of acting? This raises in turn the question of what kind of an entity is an organization. If not, as Bruno puts it, a superorganism, then what is it? Anne's answer to her own question goes this way. She began by repeating some remarks she heard on campus at George Mason U. One person was overheard to say to the other, "I like the way we're starting to integrate writing instruction across the campus." In another conversation she heard this, "I don't get why the university wants me to teach composition." As Anne points out, the key to interpreting the difference is the pronoun. The first person said we when she met the university. She cast herself, Anne writes, as a member of a collective agent. The second person said the university, but she could just as easily have substituted it or they. In other words, she was separating herself from it, the university, and in the same motion ascribing agency both to it and to herself. First person plural, we, versus third person singular, it. The relational framing has shifted from associational, we as a linking of cooperating agents, to dissociational, they or it as not we, someone else who is imposing on us. The crucial difference is that in the first instance, authority is equitably shared. In the second, it is skewed in a way that attributes to one agent and it a greater authority than I,